All right, Terry, how you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
I'm great. Unfortunately, we weren't able to do this in person like we were talking about, but it's one of those conversations that it's full of difficult subjects and topics, and we had to figure out a way to tackle it one way or another.
Yep.
And let's get right into it. Tell me a little bit about your background. Let's set the stage a little bit.
My background, actually grew up in Southeast Ohio. Joined the military back in 2000. Did one deployment to Iraq. Another one was vacation deployment to Qatar. That's where I ended up injuring my back. I was medically separated. Um, After that, made some bad choices, got on drugs, went to rehab. Um, Throughout that time, I've had three of my own children. My oldest daughter, Chelsea. I got two other kids, Caleb and Anna, with my first wife, and um, I've had my own experiences with mental health issues. A couple of suicide attempts after my drug rehabilitation. So I've been in and out of mental institutions myself.
I can
That gave me a
relate a
little bit
lot
of
to
back.
that.
That actually gave me a little bit of background on what I'm doing.
I love the fact that you're still open with it because it really sets the stage.
You've got to
With
be open with it.
you do in the world of mental health, you have to be willing to showcase where you've been. Not in a way to say, "Hey, look at me," and I want the attention, but more so in a way of saying, "Hey, I know how these things impact somebody. I
Yeah.
have actual skin in the game." And
Yep.
that's where we start to look at where it's brought you. Now you're running the Chelsea program to not only advocate for your own family, but also for the families and the people that these serious sides of mental illness really impact.
Yes. When
And
I first started, go ahead.
go for it.
When I first started this organization, it actually started as a Facebook group. My daughter had her first psychotic episode, her first bout with schizophrenia back in August of 2022, and I just started reaching out because I didn't know how to deal with it. I was,
That right there is, I think, one of the most important things that if anybody took something away from this conversation is figuring it out in real time.
yeah,
You find yourself in this situation. You obviously don't have the background or the vocabulary to truly grasp what's going on. So instead of just letting it all build up and become powerless, you empowered yourself by taking action and realizing that it's okay to step outside of that label of, I don't know, and the shame that comes with that and
yeah,
do something with
yep. And started as a Facebook group, and I got in contact with a couple of friends, and they referred me to State Representative Jamie Thompson. I ended up meeting with her husband, and he suggested that I build it into a nonprofit. He said the only way that I'm going to get the legislators to listen to me is if I become a nonprofit. So that's what I began doing. I got in contact with Ann Rudisill from Downriver for Veterans.
it.
She gave me a lot of direction on getting it started, and she's been one one of our biggest supporters through all this. And we ended up turning it into a nonprofit organization trying to change laws and get gaps in insurance closed.
And when you go through these programs, through these processes, especially with the background, and as people dig into it, it's got to be a little disheartening to have doors closed in your face in order to, you know, continue and pick up and keep going with it.
It really is, especially when you're trying to get services for your family member. You send complaints to the state about things not getting done or getting done incorrectly, and it just gets kicked right back to you, and nothing gets done about it. How are your family members? I mean, my she's got a fiance and 3 kids. She wants nothing more than to get back to her kids and get back to work. And currently, she's at an AFC group home, and until she's fully stabilized, she can't ever go home.
See, that's one of those things that when you put the word forever in front of it, it's a very scary thing. You
Yeah.
know, it again, it removes that power from everybody involved. But I want to get a little clarification. I want you to explain that process to me. What is the definition of being fully stabilized, and how do you get there?
Um, my daughter's form of schizophrenia, she's schizoaffective. She has auditory delusions, visual delusions. She's jumped out of moving vehicles twice. Um, and there's times where she can't really take care of herself. She has to be reminded to take a shower. She can't remember how to cook most of the time. And my daughter, like I said, she's got 3 kids, and when this happened, her oldest was 6, and she was a certified medical assistant. My daughter is a very smart girl. This illness just took everything away from her.
That's got to be something that's very hard, not only on the family members, but on the person involved to really try to even fathom. You know, you go from having a sustained existence to all of a sudden, now you got this new reality, you got these new challenges that you've got to learn to overcome.
Yeah. And the biggest problem we're having right now is one of the symptoms of her illness is disorganized thinking. She bases her entire reality around Disney fairy tale stories about things that in her past, that she's not sure if they're entirely true or not. So she thinks she's lied about them, and everything is a lie. And at this point right now, the only thing that she says is right is The Simpsons. And that's what her whole reality is based off of.
Which, on the outside looking in, being the parent or the caretaker, is got to be not only nerve wracking to try to wrap your own head around understanding what's going on here, but then to be supportive. There's got to be a lot of internal struggles and conflicts going on. So, talk to me a little bit about it through your perspective.
It When I started doing this, I told my daughter, I said, I'm gonna be here for you until we get you home. So I'm gonna fight every step of the way. And at times you feel like a failure. You feel like you can't keep up your word because the situation that the mental health care system is in, they've tied my hands. I can't do what I want to do for my daughter. And it kills me.
And I really commend you on being open and vulnerable about this, because this is, as a parent alone, one of the most difficult things to deal with is feeling like you have no power, but you didn't sit within the shame. You know what I mean? You actually went out and you built a whole project around identifying the problem and trying to make a change within that problem. So that's something alone that's got to build a fire underneath you to help continue living up to the message and the promise that you made.
Oh, absolutely. And one thing that keeps me going about all this is, even with the statistics that I've read and the research that I've done on her illness and the different treatments available, when I was in the VA domiciliary after my suicide attempt, I was in there for 9 months. and we had a peer support specialist. He was full blown schizophrenic. The VA had this man stable enough to where he could hold a full time job. He could recognize when his symptoms were coming on, when he needed to have his medication adjusted, and when he needed to go into the hospital. If they can have these services available for us veterans, there's no reason why those services shouldn't be there for every single person.
See, that's where within my work, I get I do a lot of work around like the labels that professionals put around things. And the fact that those labels, when they give them to somebody, they latch onto it and they become their voice. They become their personality. And obviously having skin in the game and trying to work through your own journey, you've got so much knowledge and wisdom within it that gets missed during the textbooks and all the dry lectures and conversations, that it's got to be truly frustrating.
Oh, it is. It really is. And it sitting on this side of it, look, it seems so simple to fix this entire situation. It really does. All we have to do is put the focus into mental health that needs to be there.
As a caregiver, you see that. But as a politician or somebody that, all they do is punch numbers every day, there's such a disconnect. And I experience it all the time, not only in my work, but also within my own journey. They're afraid. There's a lot of fear to actually come to a table with an open mind and an open heart in order to make progress. And that fear is based within the fact that, you know, that person in the suit and tie, they could be the person sitting on the other side of the table at
Yeah,
any given time. And they hate having to realize that, come to grips with that.
yeah, they do. And one thing that I came across with when I first started all this, I my when my daughter was in the hospital for her first hospitalization, she was at St. John's, and I don't know if you had heard about the Porter Burke shooting in Detroit.
Yeah, I've heard vaguely about it.
He was a young man that was having a mental health crisis, was wielding a knife, and ended up being shot 38 times. My daughter was in her first episode when that came on the news. Absolutely petrified me because I knew she had the same thing he did. And there was a potential of her being that next statistic.
It's those difficult conversations nobody wants to have.
Yeah.
And, as you've gone through this journey of becoming an advocate and trying to make these changes and get people to come to the table, talk to me a little bit about the fear that you've experienced or the lack of willingness to actually communicate and come to some sort of understanding.
As far as fear, there's a lot of fears that go into this being a caregiver. You you fear that the next episode is going to be her last episode and it's going to be something absolutely tragic that happens to her. We we had her staying with us for quite a while, off and on, and you live in fear of her walking out of the house and getting hurt in the middle of the night. We ended up putting double bolt doors or double bolt locks on our doors so she couldn't get out. Video camera system, alarm system, um, and when they start doing things that are completely out of character for them, it really scares you. They'll look at you like they're looking right through you one minute and look like they're ready to jump on you and beat you to a pulp next. It's and you have to find out when they're in those aggressive phases. And it's scary being in that situation, knowing that she has no control over what she's doing.
That in her eyes is just perfectly normal behavior.
And that in her eyes, she has no idea what she's doing. She is completely disconnected from reality. The majority of the time, she doesn't remember her episodes. As a matter of fact, she doesn't remember any of her episodes. She's got gaps in her memory that are up to 3 or 4 months long.
See, we've talked a lot about the behind the scenes stuff, the stuff that nobody sees unless they are in the role of being a caregiver. And we've touched on the fact that you've built a project in order to start making changes. So let's dive into that. Talk to me about the kind of work that you guys are doing over there at the Chelse program and the things that you've actually been able to get the ball rolling with.
Um, when we first started this back last year, we had the opportunity to go to a couple of mental health events. We went to Lobby Day in Lansing last year on October 10th, World Mental Health Day. We went there in support of House Bill 4707, and that ended up getting turned down. It is still on the table for state representatives to vote on it. We've done a few other events trying to raise money for the organization. We've also partnered with the Cool Kids Crew charity riders, and with them we took foster children to the water park, and we're providing them with Christmas this year. 10% of all of our unsolicited or unrestricted donations we have set aside to go to a Wayne State University scholarship fund for the School of Social Work.
See, that's kind of the beautiful part of the experience that you're going through. Is yes, there's the tragedy and the things that you're dealing with, but you're providing so much hope and you're providing a framework for other people that are dealing with it now, as well as people that are going to deal with it down the road. And
Yeah,
that's gotta bring some kind of sense of satisfaction for the whole journey.
it does. It it makes it gives us a way to give back to the community for helping us do what we're trying to do.
That I feel is what really comes out of our journey. That's what's supposed to come out of the life that we live is some kind of legacy that helps people go forward. And that's why I reached out to you in the first place. I think what you're doing with the situation is very more as unfortunate as it may be. The work that's coming out of it is such a beautiful thing.
It really is, and I'm hoping that we can make some real differences in what we're doing. Right now, we don't currently have a building. We're working on getting some grants, and I'm also looking to see if there's any type of VA funding that I can get. Once we get into a building, we want to be able to provide direct services to our local community, like household items, furniture, clothing, things like that. Because a lot of times when you're coming out of even the short-term institutions, if you've been in there for 30, 60, even 90 days, you're coming out with no food, maybe your electric bills are shut, your electric shut off, things like that, or coming out homeless. You need furniture, things like that for where you're living to give you a stable environment to start off. And we plan on expanding services as more funding comes along.
And how do you go about getting the funding? Are people just openly have a direct avenue to you, or you got to work around all the red tape?
We still have to work around all the red tape. We've done a few events, fundraisers. The grant process is something completely new to me that I'm trying to learn. I did end up getting a mentor through, I believe it was Stark out of Detroit, and they're helping me research these grant opportunities.
Now, I want to transition a little bit because there's so much importance in not only what you're doing through the public lens, but also what you're doing behind the scenes. And I want you to talk to somebody that is just finding themselves in that position where they're becoming a caregiver, and how to work through the fear and how to get yourself in a position where you can be an effective caregiver.
Um, One of the biggest, especially with severe mental illness, one of the biggest things that you're going to need is patience. I I raised my I was a yeller. I yelled all the time. My granddaughter taught me a little bit of patience, but this situation with my daughter, I realized that the calmer I could stay, the calmer I could keep her. And the more agitated they get, the more likely it is for them to go into a full blown episode. And it's really tricky at times where when you're talking to them when they're in an episode, being able to handle them with gentle hands like that, and that compassion has got to be there.
That compassion has definitely got to be a learned trait. It may sit
It,
inside of your heart, but in order to express it, you definitely got to be willing to take the time to do the work to let it evolve and come out.
yeah.
Normally toward the end of these conversations, I provide the opportunity to do all the shameless plugging, but I want to direct that in a different way as we wind down our conversation. I want you to talk about the way that people in our area locally, as well as in our, in the grand scheme of things, can provide help, can provide support for the Chelse Project.
To provide help and support for the Chelse Project, we do have two different Facebook pages. We have a public group and a private group. We have our donation information on there. We also have a Zephy account that you can donate to. One big thing that we would love your support in is continuing to push House Bill 4707. It is a very important bill that we need to begin the process of rebuilding the infrastructure for the mental health care in this state. And one of the big things it does is it eliminates the 90-day rule where insurance companies can start pushing these patients out that aren't fully stabilized.
Which to me, especially after experiencing a lot of the channels of mental health services, sounds like we're working on actually fixing a broken program.
That is our intention.
That's a beautiful, beautiful, noble mission.
And another thing that we've just started working on, we've just made public that we've been working on for a little over a year now, is we are going to start exposing Pontiac General Hospital. There's been, including my daughter, there's been a lot of neglect, abuse, mistreatment, and violation of personal rights. And it's time that the public knows what's going on in this place.
I really feel like that is the key, because a lot of this stuff happens behind closed doors.
It does.
With it being so broken, we don't want to acknowledge it, not only in a professional setting, but also in a personal setting. And the more that we have hard conversations, the more that we offer exposure like this to noble people that are out there building programs and on these kind of missions, we're able to turn that wheel maybe even just a little bit. And I think that's so fundamental, so important, because I've experienced, not only on my side of things, but also with the work that I do, a lot of people are turned off by the idea of getting the help they need because they hide behind the dusty degrees that they put on a wall. They say, we're this and that, and then you fit within this. When I was first getting into talk therapy, at the very end of the first session that I had, she told me that I had an illness, and that was the end of the call. So I'm like, what do I do with this illness now? Do I
Yeah.
sit on the do I sit on the couch and act like it's cancer, or what do I do? And needless to say, I didn't go that route and ever go back to her. But it's those kind of things that, whether you're the support and the caregiver, or you're the actual person walking that kind of a journey, it's not only frustrating, but it can also be so disempowering that it hurts the situation.
Yeah.
And that's where this is so important to put this on the table. That's why I'm so grateful that you took the time to have this conversation. And if there's any other things that you want to let people know, that they can get in touch with you, work with you, whatever the case may be, now would be the time.
Yep. We're accepting board member applications and volunteer applications. Um, we would definitely appreciate the help. You can either get a hold of me on Facebook or contact me directly at 313-597-0655.
Well, Terry, thank you so much for the conversation. It's been a pleasure to finally get together and actually talk a little bit. I don't really believe in the word goodbye or farewell or whatever, because I feel they're too permanent. So until we connect again, whether it's this life,
Absolutely.
whether it's this life or the next, I wish you all the best on your journey.
Thank you. And you too.
Thank you very much.